Good evening. There are some fast-moving developments this hour as we come on the air. 9 o'clock here in Washington, 6 p.m. in Los Angeles. That is where the situation is still devastating, dire even, as a new fire has broken out late today. And those ferocious winds that have been hampering the rescue efforts and the efforts by these firefighters to try to put out the fires you're looking at, they are picking up again tonight. That new fire, which officials are calling the Kenneth Fire this evening, it's near the border of the LA and Ventura counties. It grew quickly in just a few hours, and the governor just announced moments ago that they are deploying 900 more firefighters to go and address that fire. Now, this is coming as you are looking at live pictures right now of that fire this evening. That is what 900 firefighters are going to address just this evening. Governor Gavin Newsom announcing that a few moments ago. Now, put that on top of this. The two largest fires, the Eaton and Palisades fires, they're still 0% contained right now. Look at this mind-boggling destruction. I mean, it is entire neighborhoods that have been decimated as far as you can see. And when you look at this, of course, each of those is someone's home, and each of those had people inside of them. Right now, we are still waiting to hear more from officials, but what we know now is that true death toll in LA tonight, it is still unknown as crews are digging through the ashes of what has been left of everything that people had. CNN's Aaron Burnett is live in Pacific Palisades for us tonight. And Aaron, obviously, you got on the ground today. You've been looking at that and talking to these officials on the ground, just trying to understand the scope of this, even as they are still battling the fires that existed and new ones that are popping up this evening. What have you been seeing on the ground?
Yeah, Kaitlan, you talk about that new fire and you talk, it's mind-boggling. It is. There were people grabbing their suitcases. I don't know if you can hear it, but phones going off here, evacuation orders coming in, those alerts. And that with that fire, grabbing their suitcases more than many people here in Pacific Palisades were able to do, but immediately rushing to try to evacuate. So there's that new fire. You talked about those winds. They are anticipated to pick up over these next few hours, causing more red flag warnings. Fire officials telling me their biggest fear is fire spreading, fires growing, of course. You say they're 0% contained, but also reigniting. And here in Pacific Palisades, I mean, we're just in the middle of a completely residential street. It is pitch black up here tonight, just ash coming down everywhere, the smell. There are still small fires in so many of these houses. The house where I am now, Kaitlan, you can see really there's only a chimney. And that is true for so many of these houses, just a chimney left. Residents are not allowed yet to come back. Lonnie Wittenberg, this is her home. She raised 4 children here. We were able to track her down and show her home. And she just was... you talk about utter devastation, but, for her, looking at this wreckage, everything was a room. She can see the remnants of chairs. Her daughter, who was here, was able to grab nothing. So no family photos, nothing, no diplomas. She brought that up. She doesn't even have her children's diplomas. So the sense of incredible loss is so palpable. Just these streets, so much like a war zone, cars burnt out everywhere, the entire downtown lost. You'll see a Chase bank machine or a Bank of America. The bank machine is there, still tarnished and burned as if from war, and complete devastation. The elementary school burned down. I talked to a man who lived right over the hill, watched his condo, Kaitlan, burn down on live television, watching live TV like so many people were, and then said, oh my God, that is my home. The home where he and his wife raised their 2 daughters. Their school here in Pacific Palisades, like so much, is now completely burnt down. Here's what he told me just a few moments ago.
Basically, their history burned up last night. We watched Pali Elementary, which is where both of them went to school. We watched that burned live on TV. Pali High, where they both went, we watched that. Theater Palisades, where they both did their plays, and I built sets at, basically their entire history. We watched burn live on TV.
It's shock, it's trauma, it's loss, and those fires now reigniting, worries about more spread, and that Kenneth fire spreading tonight. Nick Watt is also here tonight in this, Nick, unbelievably bizarre darkness as ash is raining down around us.
Yeah, Aaron, I would say that today, I think reality began to set in for people after the initial shock. You and I both saw people coming back to their homes. I met a couple of people who'd walked from Santa Monica into the evacuation zone. That's a few miles to see if their houses were still standing. For the vast majority of people, they are not going to get good news. But with that realization of the reality is also coming a bit of anger. You know, we were down in Palisades Village earlier this morning, and all of a sudden Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, jumped out of an SUV and was walking around, and very quickly he was confronted by a local woman who said, why was there no water in the pumps? Why was there no water to put this fire out in the Palisades when it was at its height? And he didn't really have an answer. You know, I also spoke to a guy who said, I just built my house here 2 or 3 years ago. Who's gonna take the blame for this? People are really beginning to, you know, wonder, why was this allowed to happen? Was enough done to stop this happening in the first place? And Erin, the other thing, you know, you mentioned that ash and everything. I mean, the stuff we're breathing in, the stuff these firefighters are breathing in, you know, it's kind of gross, but when I go home every night, the grime that I pull out of my ear, I mean, that must be going into people's lungs. You know, it's just terrible. And, you know, people trying to see their homes, I mentioned this to you before, kids are now charging people a few bucks to come into the Palisades on their bikes to look at people's houses and let them know if the house is still there or is not. And those kids are giving the money to charity. They're not putting it in their pockets. But it's just terrible. You know, I've been on FaceTime with people overseas who are still on vacation because Pali High is still out for the winter break. So there are people in Thailand, Australia, who have no idea what's happened to their homes. So, you know, I've been FaceTiming with a couple of people and showing them that there's nothing left of their home. Erin?
Yeah, it is unbelievable. And the smell is so acrid. And you realize you are breathing in plastic and metal and chemicals and all of the other things in the air for people, millions of people here in this area, this surreal, just complete annihilation that we are all now witnessing as there is that other fire raging as we are watching these winds pick up tonight. Kaitlan, back to you.
Yeah, it just speaks to so much is going on right now and still so much ahead of them. Erin Burnett, Nick Watt, thank you both for those reports on the ground. We'll check back in with you. There are a lot of moving parts happening this evening. Officials in L.A. battling one fire after another. Just to demonstrate that, we were supposed to speak to the chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department tonight. She was going to join us for an interview. She was pulled away, understandably, completely understandably, because a new fire in the city broke out this evening. And it's just another reminder of how fluid this situation is that officials are confronting. Thankfully, Captain Eric Scott is back with me. He is the public information officer for the Los Angeles Fire Department. And it's great to have you back here. You know, just 24 hours ago, looking at what has changed, there's now a new fire in the West Hills, Woodland Hills area. What can you tell us? I mean, we're looking at it right now. We can see how bad it is. But what can you tell us from your vantage point?
I think you bring up a great point, Kaitlan, that contextualize things. We were talking 24 hours ago, and since then, whole new fires have been breaking out. So it just shows how dynamic this is. We're certainly not out of the woods yet. We're so thankful to get a little reprieve from those incredibly strong winds Tuesday, Wednesday. So going into day 3, we got a little break. Aircraft is back up. That's a huge help. But as you could see, these fires that start when the spark hits the dry brush, because the wind made it so dry, it's so susceptible, and it's enough to push it into hundreds of acres in a matter of minutes. So it started in just the very west end of the San Fernando Valley, and then it started to burn southward, and it went from 50 to 500 acres probably within an hour.
How worried are you about this new fire as you're looking at it right now?
I'm not that worried. You know, it's unique that that's an area we call an MTZ, a mutual threat zone. Why is that unique? Because the Los Angeles City, big department, Los Angeles County and Ventura County, all big departments, are really near there. So arguably, we have the largest fleet of aerial resources on an initial dispatch anywhere in the nation. So we definitely hit these hard. We hit them fast. But we're thin-staffed. We're battling so many fires, but we've laid this fire down very well. We've stopped most forward progress. That's not to say another erratic wind gust won't change that, and we won't have some other significant problems. We can't say this enough, but wind is key. So if those winds kick up, it's going to be a challenge. We got a few more days where we're going to have a little less wind, but we're going to get sun. That's going to preheat the fuels, which is another challenge. We have no rain in sight. We've seen maybe a half of the amount that we would normally at this time.
I mean, those aerial firefighters are doing the Lord's work. It is incredibly impressive to watch them and to see how quickly they are working. And they're glad to be back up in the air as well. You know, given how quickly this is changing, and 24 hours ago, this fire did not exist, and now it does now. Are there any other areas that you're watching that you're worried a fire could explode either tonight? You know, what do you have your eye on this evening?
No bets are off. Los Angeles is unique. You got 470 square miles, maybe 20% of that is brush. So any of those areas that are backed up to brush are potential targets. We're not saying that to worry people unnecessarily, but I think with everyone seeing the amount of apocalyptic devastation that has transpired, I sure hope people, if anything, you remember this, and it's that if a wildfire is near your home, leave and leave early. It is a challenge when we are trying to come up these narrow canyon roads, hairpin turns turn to choke points, and it's challenging to get us up there. So we put out wireless emergency alerts immediately on these. We had mandatory evacuation orders. We told people where the fire was going because we get all this data and historical data, and we put it in supercomputers, and we actually project it and find target hazards and tell them, hey, now you're on warning. We sure hope people heed those warnings. Well,
and speaking of those warnings, you know, we talked about how important they are and that people are heeding them. We talked about that last night. You just reiterated that. An emergency alert did go out earlier today across Los Angeles. Inadvertently, it was an error. It was telling people to evacuate, and I know it was quickly corrected. But do you have concerns that a mistake like that, a misstep like that, means people may not take real evacuation orders seriously?
I am aware of that. The county of Los Angeles, I'm the city, so it's a separate entity, put out an alert, and they retracted that. We're also well aware that people that get notification fatigue, you know, when your alerts go off all the time, people sometimes are just trying to quiet their phone before they even see what they're quieting. So that the signal to noise ratio is a real thing. We try to send signal and reduce noise. I don't have an answer to what that problem was because that's not my jurisdiction. It would be unfair for me to comment, but we are aware of it. And by all means, people need to pay very close attention to those WIA alerts. That's a great way to get intel early on.
You know, Nick Watt, our reporter on the ground, I don't know if you heard him earlier, but he was talking, you know, he's been in the Palisades. He lives there also. You know, he's been checking on people's houses for them. Some of his friends who are calling and, you know, they're not in town and asking, is my house still there? And one thing he said that is breaking through today is people's anger, wanting to know more from officials. That he said it's very clear and visceral from some people, understandably so. You know, from your perspective, when you look at this, and people are going to be asking questions, do you feel that the city was prepared for a threat like this one?
You know, this has been extremely challenging. I'm going to be honest. The Los Angeles City Fire Department, we could use more firefighters. Fire Chief Crowley has been on record saying we're understaffed, we're under-resourced. And that is something that people above my pay grade are having frank conversations and working on. For us firefighters, we are challenged to the absolute max right now. You know, on an average, your Los Angeles City Fire Department is so busy. We run 1,500 emergency incidents and 911 calls every day. We're now running nearly 4,000 during these incidents. There is no stop. And the infrastructure of 4 million people is huge. Really, you go back 60 years ago and we ran maybe 100,000 calls a year. Now we're almost 600,000. And so we're just trying to keep up. And we are very thankful for mutual aid. That is where neighbor helps neighbor, and we're getting resources beyond just our nearby companies were coming from out of the states, and that's a big win. We need that help, and that's going to help us lean forward and continue to strive to battle this.
Well, good to hear those conversations are happening. We'll be interested to see what comes of them. And of course, for those firefighters, we know they are doing everything. They must be completely exhausted. So please tell them, everyone's rooting for them. Everyone's thinking of them. Captain Eric Scott, it's great to have you back. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Caitlin.
A mother of 3 children is going to join us next. How she and her family escaped the Palisades fire. What are they going to do now that they have lost everything? Breaking news this hour as firefighters are battling yet another wildfire on the Los Angeles border with Ventura County. As winds are picking up right now, you are looking at live pictures of this new fire here. This is another one that they are dealing with. We just heard from a representative from the LA Fire Department talking about this. California's governor has just deployed 900 more firefighters to go and battle what you are looking at here. This comes as we've learned that President Biden talked to Governor Gavin Newsom and a number of other elected officials from the state this evening to get a check on what is happening on the ground. That's where we find CNN's Aaron Burnett in Pacific Palisades. Aaron, of course, this is just something that officials are dealing with from the White House to California, having these conversations about what to deal with. But it's real people that are at the heart of this, that are battling this themselves on a daily basis.
That's right. And of course, we just got some new satellite images in that actually show, if you look here at Pacific Palisades, almost every single structure is destroyed. It is really something that would have been impossible for anyone to even think about just days ago. And then within the space of hours, the fire just moved so quickly down that hill and just destroyed so many lives and annihilated an entire small town, entire city, really, within the city of Los Angeles. Mercedes Beck was watching, she was evacuated with almost no warning from her condo, and then was shown a picture only afterwards of what happened to it, completely gone. And Mercedes, I am so sorry. I know you and your 3 children are now dealing with the loss of your home, your 4th grader, the loss of school. Impossible for anyone to truly imagine. And I know 3 days ago, probably for you. So tell me what happened. How much warning did you even have to get out?
Thank you, Erin, for having me. I received a call that there was a fire in the Palisades. I was in Santa Monica, and I think all of us living in Southern California, we get high anxiety when we hear that. So I rushed to my son's elementary school, Pali Elementary. He's a 4th grader. His name's Jack. And I rushed to his classroom. I opened the door, and I didn't want to alarm the other children. And I said, we have a doctor's appointment right now. He's waiting for us. We have to leave right now. I took my son. We ran to the car, and he was scared. He was crying. I was scared, trying to, be calm and try to get out of Palisades as fast as we could. And thankfully we did, and so many did, gratefully. It was very scary for my son, who's 10, and then wanted to go pick up my other daughter at the middle school. It was just wanting to get everybody safe and get out as fast as we could, thankfully.
It's just the fear of death, which it would have been. I mean, just so horrible. When you saw a photo, and I know that a friend actually showed you a photo, because I know it's very hard to come back into these areas to see your home, your condo. Oh, gosh, did you even recognize it when you saw the photo of destruction?
For the first about 24 hours, we didn't know if our condo was gone. There was a lot of questions, and somebody was able to go into the community and take a photo. And they sent it to us, and it was just crushing. Definitely just absolutely crushing to see. So many memories. It's hard to believe. It's hard to process. And so many friends, so many family members are going through the same thing in our community. And my heart just aches for everyone going through this.
Your children, and you talk about Jack in 4th grade. I mean, his school is gone. I know at this point, obviously, you don't know what will happen next for school, for any of those things. It just got to be a complete black hole right now for you. But how do you even talk about it with him? How are you even managing this?
You know, Aaron, it's one of those things that we're kind of learning as we go. Really just a lot of love and support, lots of hugs, and lots of reassurance that we're in this together. So many of your friends are going through this, and we're going to get through it, and everything's going to be okay. Just reassurance, I think, but also letting them feel their feelings and cry if they want to cry. Just a lot of processing for everybody to go through in the next few days, weeks, months. So just kind of lots of love and reassurance.
And Mercedes, as you start this, I was talking to someone who had a condo here right in this area, Pacific Palisades, and he was saying even though their condo is completely gone, they're still expected to pay the mortgage, to pay the HOA, that, you know, all these costs are coming in, even as they don't have a home, they have nowhere to go. You know, these are the realities that can cause such excruciating pain in life. Have you even been confronted with any of that yet?
You know, it's hard to even get to that point. I'm just so overwhelmed with what's happened. I feel like we need a few days to kind of gather our bearings, and our minds are kind of frozen in shock and disbelief. And I feel like we just need a few days to process, and then we'll figure out the next steps, whatever that might be. We don't know what that's going to look like for school, where we're going to live. Just a lot of question marks that we're going to have to walk through in this journey after the fire. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of
yeah.
You know,
Well,
insurance.
I know
What is
there's now
insurance?
before and an after, and you're right. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I think there's a bit of a delay. I didn't mean to step on you, but I know how grateful you are to have your children and to be with them. There's nothing more important, and thank goodness for that. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really are grateful for that.
Thank you so much for covering our town.
Yeah. The loss and the trauma, Kaitlan, I think that's also the reality that there is just an incredible trauma here. Somebody described it as literally sometimes they feel physically frozen, not just mentally or emotionally frozen, but literally physically frozen as their body physically tries to comprehend what they're going through. And that is the moments that we're in right now, even as these fires are not contained and continue to spread.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to help people like Mercedes and her family. I know so many people have reached out. And if you're looking for more information about how you can help Los Angeles wildfire victims, you can go to cnn.com/impact. You can find trusted resources there, places that you can help people like Mercedes and so many others who are going to need it so desperately. We're going to continue tracking these fires and, of course, that new one that is broken out that we are keeping a very close eye on this evening. There's also other big breaking news here in Washington. The U.S. Supreme Court just rejected Donald Trump's emergency request to block his sentencing set to happen tomorrow morning. He was citing the fact that he is taking office in just a matter of days from now. Two conservative justices sided with the liberals. We'll break it down for you in a moment. There's more breaking news tonight as the Supreme Court just a short time ago refusing to stop Donald Trump from being sentenced on 34 felony counts tomorrow morning. It is a ruling that came down 5-4 with Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joining the court's liberals and the majority here. That means that the president-elect, 10 days before he is going to take the oath of office, will formally be sentenced tomorrow as a convicted felon for essentially cooking the books to cover up hush money payments made to a porn star.
We're going to appeal anyway, just psychologically, because frankly, it's a disgrace. It's a judge that shouldn't have been on the case. So I'll do my little thing tomorrow. They can have fun with their political opponent.
That was Donald Trump tonight at Mar-a-Lago speaking to reporters right after the Supreme Court order came down. I'm going to get right to CNN's Ellie Honig, who is joining me here. Ellie, you see Donald Trump, he is at Mar-a-Lago there. That means he is going to be appealing virtually appearing virtually tomorrow. We'll get to that in a moment. But on this decision, everyone was waiting to see what it said. Even people in Trump world that I've been talking to were kind of divided on whether or not the Supreme Court was going to take their side. Were you surprised by this?
I was surprised it was this close, Kaitlan. We were one vote away from the U.S. Supreme Court preventing Donald Trump from getting sentenced by Zoom to nothing. I mean, that would have damaged the Supreme Court's credibility beyond all recognition. And I think the opinion that came down 5-4, letting the sentencing go, I think it was perfectly sound. Basically, the justices in the majority said two things. First of all, they said, what's the harm? You're going to get sentenced to 0. You can do it by Zoom. You can roll out of bed and do it. And second of all, you do maybe have substantial issues. I think he has substantial issues on appeal, but you can handle them through the full appeal process that will follow your sentencing.
They're saying you don't need to do this right now. There are normal channels to handle this through, but Trump just doesn't want it to happen before he becomes president.
And you know what's maybe ironic about it? Trump actually gets a benefit by being sentenced tomorrow, which is once that sentencing is over, as of tomorrow morning, then he can take his full appeals. He can go up the New York courts of appeals. He can go maybe to the U.S. Supreme Court and say the charge against me was unconstitutional, which I think it may be. He can say that the jury was not properly instructed. But if he had gotten his way, if he was not sentenced tomorrow, he would not have been able to appeal. That would have been it. So this sentence would have sort of died in netherworld.
Well, and part of their argument had been that it was going to be too tough for him to get sentenced tomorrow, that he couldn't show up to the sentencing in New York. The justices made a point, the 5 who ruled that this could happen, and said that it was relatively insubstantial in light of what the court is saying that they're going to do, which is to impose that sentence of unconditional discharge. And it's a brief virtual hearing. He doesn't have to be there in person tomorrow.
So this was a smart move by Judge Merchan, because he said last week, I'm going to sentence you to essentially nothing, and you can do it by Zoom. If Merchan had not done that, if he just said, appear for sentencing Friday, it'll be like any other sentencing. You don't know what you're going to get until I tell you. That might have changed the Supreme Court's calculus, because Trump's argument was, I could be subject to what we call irreparable harm. And if Trump was able to say, I don't know, maybe this guy's going to try to lock me up. Maybe he's going to impose some serious penalty. Maybe I don't have the time as president-elect to travel to New York and sit in a courtroom and go through security. Instead, Merchan absolutely minimized that.
Okay, so he appears virtually via, I'll call it Zoom. I don't even know what it is for the court system. When you get sentenced, you have an option to say something, right?
You just hit on what the biggest point is going to be to watch for tomorrow. Any defendant at sentencing absolutely has a right to speak. Almost always they do. So Trump might say, I have nothing to say, Your Honor, or he might give us a rant. I mean, I would bet on that because, look, he's got nothing to lose. He knows he's getting sentenced to nothing. So
even
watch
if he speaks before the sentencing and goes off on the judge, which he does and did tonight, that won't change how Merchan sentences him?
Well, Merchan left himself a tiny bit of wiggle room, right? He didn't say, I promise I will sentence you. He said, I intend to sentence you. But I think it would take an awfully lot to push Merchan from sentence you to unconditional discharge to lashing out with a sentence.
Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Roberts, Alito. They were willing to stop this. Make that argument.
Their argument would be, as a purely procedural matter, Trump was still in the process of appealing based on immunity, right? We got the immunity ruling 6 months ago. And if you look at it a certain way procedurally, while you're appealing on immunity as a defendant, you're entitled to a complete stay, meaning no trial, no sentencing, no nothing. But the majority, and again, Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts joined with the liberals, said, but if there's no harm, there's no harm. And that's really what carried the day here.
So this news, and then right after that, it came down the effort to keep the special counsel's report away from public view. Also, Trump lost on that. They can still appeal it. We'll see what happens. And
we're going to see. I'll spoil that one. We're going to see those reports eventually.
Okay. Well, we might see you back here tomorrow night, Ellie Honig. So thank you for that. Up next, of course, we are continuing to keep a close eye on what is happening on the ground in Los Angeles. Fighting these fires from the air was my next guest's former job. Now he is a U.S. senator. We're going to talk to him about what he says is needed to prevent future disasters like the one that so many Angelenos are living through right now.